So hello and welcome everyone to our webinar today. We have a very hot topic at the moment, which is Single Touch Payroll, or STP for short, and rolling into phase 2. This webinar today will run for around 30 minutes or so. We will cover off any key points around STP and then obviously jumping into a demonstration. As you're probably all aware by now, with Zoom webinars, there is a chat box and a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to pop in all of your questions as we go along, and we'll try to answer them as we go, or definitely towards the end of the webinar. Just to introduce you all to your presenters today, my name is Erin Turner. I'm an accountant here at Smart Business Solutions. It's hard to believe I've actually been helping clients for 5.5 years now. I would love to introduce you all to my co-host today, Hannah Northey. She's also an accountant here at Smart. Hannah is an absolute superstar, and she has a finalist badge for one of the National Accounting Awards to prove it. Here at Smart Business Solutions, if you don't already know us, we do have an array of services from accounting to mortgage broking to financial planning and estate planning. But of course, for today's webinar, the topic is STP and Xero, which is another thing we can also help you with. Just to quickly run through our agenda items for today. So today, Hannah and myself will be running through STP. So what is it and what is STP Phase 2? It's a bit of a mouthful. And what this exactly means for you guys as business owners. So we'll jump into a live demo towards the end. So hopefully then walking away from this webinar, you can be confident in getting yourselves up and running and being STP compliant by the 31st of March, which is coming around very quickly. So like I said, to kick us off, we're just going to quickly retouch on what is STP. So Single Touch Payroll, it's basically where you are submitting all your employee information off to the ATO as you run your individual pay runs. All this is done through your STP enabled software. So to break that down, and what that exactly means is the moment you pay your employees, so whether that's weekly, fortnightly, monthly, you're actually submitting all your employees' gross wages, how much you're withholding in tax, and obviously their super information as well. So all that is already getting sent to the ATO as part of STP Phase 1. Whereas previously, before STP was around, you would have been only submitting this information once a year as part of, the old payment summaries and all that. So that's old school, and now everything is done through STP. So the ATO requires this information on a more regular basis, and it also benefits your employees as well. So what exactly is STP Phase 2? So this is technically just an expansion of Phase 1. So obviously you're up and running with Phase 1 already, but now the ATO actually requires just a little bit more information rather than just those wages, tax and super info. So now you'll be submitting more information the exact same way as what you're already doing, but you do need to get this up and running in your software, which hopefully you're on Xero, as that's what our demonstration will be run through today. Phase 2 sends off all the individual parts that make up an employee's pay run. So just to quickly touch on a few of those and what exactly you'll be submitting. So you'll be submitting the employment type. So what this is whether the individual is an employee on a salary and wage, whether they're a holiday maker, a foreign employee, a closely held payee, or a contractor. Just to note though, with contractors, you don't actually submit this information through STP. There are obviously more employment types out there, but these are probably the most common ones that you're probably aware of. I just mentioned closely held payees. I'm going to touch on this in a bit more detail because this is probably really relevant for most of you attendees today. So a closely held payee is actually someone directly related to the business. So whether that's a director or shareholder, or even a family member that currently receives payments from the business. So just be mindful when you are setting up this in your payroll software, just to be cautious that you are ticking in closely held payees if that's relevant. STP2 will also be submitting employment basis, so whether your employees are part-time, full-time or casual. And you'll also be submitting how the individual is paid. So for example, all the different income types actually broken down. So rather than them just receiving the gross wage that your employees are receiving, they'll now see exactly how much of this is made up of a salary and wage versus all the allowances. It's also important to note that if you do currently pay an all-purpose allowance, this actually has to be broken down, whether that's partly car allowance, phone allowance, and those types of things as well. So it's really important to get that set up in your payroll software so the ATO knows the exact breakdown of an employee's pay. You'll also be submitting the tax scale. So you'll set this up in the payroll software, and we'll go through in the Xero demo anyway, but basically the tax scale is your pay as you go withholding tax scale category. So this just determines how much someone should be being withheld from their pay. Now, this might sound like a lot to you guys, but there is obviously a small time investment to get these all ticked in on your payroll software and to make sure that you are STP Phase 2 compliant. But once you're set up, it's all processed the same way. The ATO will receive this information that they need. Your employees, like I said, will benefit because they actually get to track this when it comes to the end of year as well. But we do encourage you to get this completed as soon as possible because the due date is the 31st of March, and this will come around in no time. As we all know, we're already in 2023. I'm going to hand over to Hannah now, who is going to be running through the remainder of the presentation.
Thanks, Erin. So we understand that it's frustrating when these sorts of changes arise, like having to set up your director ID, but unfortunately, it's just one of those annoying things that you need to do. It's not all doom and gloom though, because there are some benefits. So you don't need to send TFN declarations to the ATO anymore as part of STP2. Instead, your employees will give this to you to keep on file instead of mailing it to them. And for businesses with 19 or fewer employees, if you have a closely held payee, which Erin went through earlier, which is most likely to be you, you're entitled to keep the concessional reporting options for income types that we went through earlier. So concessional reporting just means that you post your STP for closely held payees on a quarterly basis rather than immediately. If you pay yourself a regular wage with your other employees, then you probably don't need to worry about this. Child support can voluntarily be reported through STP. This reduces the need to send separate remittance advices to the child support registrar. What you need to do. So as mentioned before, employers must report through STP Phase 2 by the first payday after the 31st of March this year. We recommend you get onto this as soon as possible to make sure that you have time to fix any potential issues and to ensure that you're compliant. Leave types, employees and earnings must be updated. For employees who were added after September last year, updating won't be necessary. Most employees will fall in the salary and wages income type. However, with many of you being closely held payees, it's important to note that reporting requirements are different for these individuals. So if you've just hired your child or other relative, you'll need to select them as a closely held payee when setting them up in Xero, but only if you qualify for the concession. What isn't changing? STP is lodged the exact same way that it's currently being lodged. Due dates are the same, tax and super obligations. All businesses are still required to do the end of year STP finalizations for their employees before the 14th of July each year. Now, distributions to beneficiaries of a trust, shareholders, dividend payments and amounts that are a loan from the business are not in the scope of STP and are not reported through STP. Now we'll walk through how to make these changes in your Xero file. This video is pre-recorded, but if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat.
In this video, we'll show you how to update your existing payroll employee records with the fields required as part of Single Touch Payroll Phase 2. Before you see it in action, let's touch on a couple of things. To meet the filing criteria for STP Phase 2, every employee record must have a tax treatment code assigned based on the employee set up within Xero Payroll. A note on contractors. You currently do not need to report contractor payments through STP, and this continues under STP Phase 2. The Australian Taxation Office recommends you continue to pay contractors as you normally do. So, if you're paying contractor invoices through accounts payable, you can continue this process. Or, if you want contractor costs to be deducted from your payroll accounts, then set up these payees in Xero Payroll to facilitate and track the payments. The vast majority of contractors set up in Xero Payroll are to facilitate superannuation-only payments, using Xero's Auto Super feature. Now let's see the STP Phase 2 Employee Transition Wizard in action. From Payroll, click on Single Touch Payroll, then STP Phase 2. Here in the STP portal, You'll see an overview of the key steps to updating your payroll data to be STP Phase 2 compliant. The first step is to update your active payroll employee records. It's essential to complete this first step before moving on to step 2. The STP portal will pull every employee record from your employee list. You only need to update active employee records or employees who may be included in a future pay run. Let's get started and click Update Employee Profiles. This takes you to the payroll employee list, which shows you all of my payroll employee records. This clearly identifies which records need to be updated for STP Phase 2. Remember, some of these records may be old or inactive. You can ignore these and focus on only current active employees or those you may need to pay in the future. I need to update Gabrielle Seymour as she is currently employed in my business. So, I'll click on Update. This takes me to an update screen for Gabrielle, where I will need to define the required fields for STP Phase 2. First, we'll need to select if Gabrielle is an employee or a contractor. Gabrielle is an employee, so I'll choose this option. Next, I'll need to select what type of income Gabrielle earns. There are 3 options to choose from: salary and wages for a regular arm's length employee, closely held payee for working and non-executive directors, family members of a family business or beneficiaries of a trust, and working holiday maker. Gabrielle is a regular arm's length employee, so I'll select salary and wages. The final step in the wizard is to define the tax scale. The tax scale informs the Australian Tax Office which tax schedule to apply to the individual. There are 4 options for tax scale: regular, actors, variety artists and other entertainers, horticulturists and shearers, and seniors and pensioners. Xero Payroll only supports pay-as-you-go withholding for the tax scale of regular. If you are selecting any of the other options, you will need to manually calculate the pay-as-you-go withholding rate that's included in the pay run. Gabrielle is classed as regular, so that's what I'll select. Then I'll save and continue. If you haven't done so already, invite your employees to Xero Me. Xero Me gives access to payslips, timesheets, and the ability to submit leave requests, saving you time in managing these common requests. All you need is your employee's email address. If your employee's email address is already in payroll, the email field will auto-populate. Xero Me is complimentary for all Xero Payroll users. My employee will get an email and instructions to download Xero Me and get access to their payslips, leave requests, and timesheets. Then I'll just click Invite. Now let's click back to Employees. On the employee list, Gabrielle is now showing with no action required and the update option has disappeared. So let's move on to the next person in our list, Alexandra. And then I'll click Update. Alexandra is a contractor, so I'll select the contractor option. I have also set up Alexandra in Xero Payroll in order to make superannuation payments using AutoSuper. Next, I'll need to define an income type, and there are 2 income types available for contractors. The first is non-employee. This category is what you would consider a traditional subcontractor. You would use this option to pay a contractor based on an hourly rate or an invoiced amount. The second income type is labour hire. This option is to be used by labour hire firms when paying staff they've placed at a client organisation. For Alexandra, I'll choose non-employee. Next, I'll need to provide her ABN. This is required for all contractors. I will also need to provide Alexandra's tax file number or TFN as part of the transition to STP Phase 2. Once the transition is complete later on in the year, you will no longer need to provide TFNs for contractors in Xero Payroll. I'll enter the TFN and click Save and Continue. So that's 2 examples of how to update your existing employee records, one for a regular employee and another for a contractor. Once you've done this a few times, you should be able to make the changes to your employee records in only a few moments. When all your active employees have been updated, navigate back to the STP portal and mark Step 1 as done. It's then time to move on to Step 2, which is updating your pay items. So that's how to use the Employee Transition Wizard to update your existing payroll employee records.
With Phase 1 of STP, the gross amount sent to the ATO contained different types of earnings depending on an employee's income type. These include items like paid leave, bonuses, director's fees, and allowances. Now, under STP Phase 2 reporting, each of these items are being disaggregated out from the gross amount and are required to be itemised and reported separately to the ATO. The items requiring disaggregation are director's fees, bonuses and commissions, allowances, overtime, paid parental leave, workers' compensation payments, and lastly, lump sum payments. If you pay your employees allowances, particularly all-purpose allowances as part of an award, you may need to take additional steps to ensure you are reporting correctly to the ATO. You can find more information on Xero Central to determine if this applies to your business. It's now time to take a look at the Pay Item Transition tool, which will help you identify and replace any active pay items so that they can be reported correctly to the ATO as part of Phase 2 reporting. Remember, you must mark Step 1, which is the Employee Transition tool, as complete before moving on to this step, which is Step 2, Pay Item Transition. First, let's head to the STP Phase 2 portal in Xero Payroll. So from the Payroll menu, we'll select Single Touch Payroll and then the STP Phase 2 tab. If I scroll down, you can see I've already completed Step 1, which is to update my employee profiles. Step 1 must be completed first, and this is because some earnings categories are incompatible with some employment relationships. So for example, working holiday makers cannot have any income classified as director's fees. And we'll take a look at an example of this shortly. Let's go ahead and begin updating our pay items. So I'll click Replace Pay Items, and this takes us to Payroll Settings and shows us a list of our pay items that we've already got set up. There are a range of pay items you may need to update the earnings category for in order for them to be reporting correctly. Let's look at an example. I have a number of bonus and commission pay items set up in payroll. 2 of these are already reporting with the correct earnings category of bonuses and commissions, so they don't need to be replaced. However, the quarterly sales bonus is showing as ordinary time earnings, so this will need to be replaced. To do this, let's click the Overflow menu and then Replace. Firstly, I need to select the STP Phase 2 reporting category for the pay item quarterly sales bonus. So from the drop-down, I'll choose bonuses and commissions, as this is a bonus payment. I'll click Next, and we can now review the settings of our new pay item. On the left is our current pay item settings, and on the right is what Xero Payroll will change it to. What I will call out here is the PAYG settings. The previous bonus payment was set to be exempt from PAYG withholding. This is actually incorrect, and Xero Payroll will now automatically apply PAYG withholding to earnings rates classified as bonuses and commissions through STP Phase 2. And you can read more about it by clicking the blue hyperlink here to the ATO's website. I'll click Next to move on. Now it's time to view which employee pay templates will be updated with the new disaggregated pay item quarterly sales bonus. You can choose to exclude any employee pay template from this update by simply unchecking the tick box next to that employee's name. However, I want all my active employees to be STP Phase 2 compliant, so I'll check them all. We'll then click Next to move to the final step, which is to confirm what Xero Payroll will do on your behalf. You can see that a new pay item will be created, the current pay item will be marked as inactive, and we'll have 4 employee pay templates that will be updated with the new and correct pay item. So I'll click Confirm and Success. The pay item quarterly sales bonus will now be reported correctly with an earnings category of bonus and commissions instead of ordinary time earnings. If I navigate back to my pay item settings, and we'll see the quarterly sales bonus is correctly disaggregated and the prior pay item has been marked as inactive. Now, let's look at another example. Here we have a director's fee. This is currently reporting through STP as ordinary time earnings. However, we do need to replace this and report it correctly, and we'll choose the earnings category of director's fees. So let's repeat the replacement process. We'll click the overflow menu and then replace. And from the drop down, I'll choose the reporting category as director's fees. I'll click next to move to step 2. And we now need to review our current director fee pay item settings with what Xero Payroll will create for us. And we can see that our earnings category is updating. Let's click next to review our employee pay template. We have 2 employees whose template can be updated as their employment relationship meets the criteria for the director's fee earnings category. However, I can see that we have 1 employee pay template, Annabelle Peters, who can't be updated. And this is due to Annabelle being set up as a working holiday maker and is therefore ineligible to earn director's fees. This is why, as part of the transition to STP Phase 2 reporting, it's important to update all your employee records first prior to replacing your pay items, as the employee relationship determines what type of income they are eligible for. So in this instance, Annabelle's pay template will not be updated. So we'll click next to move to the final step, which is confirming what Xero will do on your behalf. It will create the new pay item, it'll mark the current pay item as inactive, and it will update 2 employee pay templates. So I'll go ahead and click confirm. And success. The director's fee pay item will now be disaggregated from the gross and reported correctly to the ATO as director's fees. If I head back to pay item settings, we can see in the list that the director's fees earning category is now correct and our previous director's fee is now marked as inactive. The final step that we need to complete is we need to head back to the STP Phase 2 portal and mark step 2 as complete. So let's go ahead and do this by scrolling back down and marking those pay items that we have reviewed, and any that are not eligible or you don't have in your payroll settings, you can tick as NA. I'll click mark as complete and proceed. And we have now completed step 2, replacing our pay items, and we're ready for step 3 when that is available. In this video, we'll show you how to update your existing leave types so that your employees' leave payments are reported correctly to the ATO for STP Phase 2 reporting. Phase 2 reporting introduces a new set of ATO reporting categories for paid leave. The new categories ensure that leave payments made to your employees are reported to the ATO using the correct reporting codes. These reporting codes are other paid leave, ancillary and defence leave, cash out of leave in service, unused leave on termination, paid parental leave, and workers' compensation. Through Xero's Leave Transition Experience tool, we'll be focusing on 2 categories, other paid leave and ancillary and defence leave. Let's now take a look at the Leave Transition tool. This is the 3rd and final step to move your payroll data to Single Touch Payroll Phase 2. By now, you should have updated your existing employee records, which was step 1, and assigned the appropriate earnings category to your pay items, which was step 2. You would have then marked both of those as complete in the STP Phase 2 portal. Now, a reminder that unpaid leave pay items won't require a leave category to be assigned. This is because there is no requirement to report unpaid leave through STP, as there is no payment to report. We begin in the STP Phase 2 portal. Under steps 1 and 2, you can see these have been marked as complete. This is required before you can proceed to the leave transition step, which we're about to take a look at now. Under step 3, I'll click Update Leave Categories. This takes me into the Leave Transition tool, And if I scroll down, you can see I have leave pay items in use and leave pay items that haven't been used. Let's start with the leave types that are in use. Looking at annual leave, from the drop-down, we have the new leave categories. I'll choose annual leave, and this will automatically populate the ATO reporting category as other paid leave type O. Let's now look at carers leave. From the drop-down, I'll select personal sick carers leave, and this will populate other paid leave type O as the ATO reporting category. I'll now update the remaining leave types. For community leave, I'll choose community service leave. For rostered day off, I'll choose rostered day off. For sick leave, I'll choose personal sick carers leave. And for long service leave, I'll choose long service leave. Now, let's look at the leave types that haven't been used. We can update these now or assign a leave category at a later stage before processing a pay run with that leave type. For compassionate leave, I'm going to chat with my bookkeeper about this, so I'll update it at a later stage. Let's click Next to move on. You may now be prompted to confirm that you understand the changes to leave loading that Xero Payroll will make on your behalf when you've finished updating your leave types. This will appear if you've previously added a leave loading rate to a leave item that is no longer eligible for leave loading. To proceed, I'll click Understood. The final review is to confirm the changes I've made to the leave types. Once a leave type has been included in a posted pay run, the leave category cannot be changed. I'm happy with the changes, so I will proceed by clicking Next. And success! The leave categories are now confirmed and I can review the changes made. For example, under the Unused Leave on Employment Termination section, I can see that the unused balance for annual leave and long service leave will be set to paid out upon termination by default. If I scroll down and expand the SGC section, you can also check which leave categories are exempt from SGC and update if required in pay item settings. Let's go back to pay items and we'll take a look at the leave type that we left earlier. We've confirmed things with our bookkeeper, so we can update compassionate leave individually. Let's click the overflow menu for compassionate leave, then edit. From the drop-down, I'll choose compassionate and bereavement leave and click Save. Now that all the leave types have a category assigned, which you can see under Leave Category, let's mark Step 3 as complete. To do this, let's go to the STP Phase 2 portal. Scrolling down to Step 3, let's click Mark as Complete and confirm by going to the next step. I've now completed Step 3, and having completed Step 1 and 2 also, my payroll data is now ready to file to the new Phase 2 filing standards.
All right, so as you can see, that was a very lengthy, detailed run through of how to update your payroll in Xero to be STP compliant. I'm actually going to hand over to Hannah now, who is going to take over hosting roles to actually run through an example around allowances in Xero, because this is quite a specific topic, especially when it does come to trades. Thank you to one of our attendees who have raised this. So I'm going to stop sharing momentarily and just handing over to you now, Hannah, if you want to just make sure that works. And just a reminder, you're on mute.
Yes. Can everyone see my screen?
I can.
So I'm in the demo company, and to access the Single Touch Payroll portal, we go to the Payroll tab and click Single Touch Payroll. Now we go here, and so you'll need to do the first step, which is updating your employees, and then you can move on to the second step. So this is the allowance part. Go to replace pay items. And we can see here that they have these all-purpose allowances, which is not permitted for STP2. So for those who use allowances such as car allowances, laundry allowance, transport allowance, you will need to separately set up these pay items so that it's compliant for STP2. So I'm just going to click add and then click allowance. So I'll call this one a car allowance. And here you've got these options, which makes it really easy, and they've already got a car allowance here, so we'll select that one. I want this to show up as a car allowance on the pay slips for the employees. I'm just going to put a fixed amount for this one, and the expense account will be motor vehicle expenses. So this one, we're not going to put it as exempt from PAYG withholding, and it is reportable as W1 on the activity statement, and it's exempt from superannuation guarantee contribution.
Just to jump in as well, if you're not sure exactly whether or not your allowances are to withhold tax or not, there's a great ATO table that can help you run through it, or obviously do reach out to either ourselves or your accountant that will be able to confirm it. This is probably the most common setup, as most people do pay slightly above wards and the ATO standard rates. So yeah, for a standard allowance, this is the setup that you would normally see.
Yeah. So I'm just going to click add, and then we'll see that here as an allowance, and it's its own separate one. So you can go ahead and do that for all your other allowances. It's the same steps. So if we're going to do a laundry allowance, there is an option here. For any that aren't listed here, you can always just click other and give it your own name.
Just to answer a question that's come through about that fixed amount as well. So that fixed amount that Hannah's just about to select, you don't actually key this in select that. The amount that has the box there, this will be the amount that goes on to the pay run. I would recommend not filling this in, because it might be on a employee by employee basis, or if you do increases once a year, then you'll have to go in and edit it here, rather than as soon as you set up this allowance, then you'll actually jump into your pay templates for an employee, and then you'll actually allocate how much you're paying in this specific allowance. So for example, your laundry allowance, if it's $200, then you would key that in under the actual individual pay template for that employee.
Yes, so I've just been leaving this one blank because it's optional, and I don't think the demo company has an account for this, but you would select cleaning and laundry, and then again, we would be doing these two options and click add. It's not going to work because I haven't selected an expense account though, but that's just what you would do for all your separate allowances.
And whilst you are in your payroll settings updating for STP2, it's not something that we probably jump in on a regular basis. It's actually probably a good idea to review any of these earnings and actually remove any that are inactive, just so then it doesn't pop down on every time you create a new pay run. And yeah, it's just really convenient to be in your payroll settings and just cleaning it up a bit. So you can actually go to those three dots on the right hand side and mark anything that's no longer relevant as inactive. It still shows down the very bottom, but it's just not going to show up in a drop down box. And also doing this for STP, it's actually a really good peace of mind for yourselves that you've actually selected these tax rates correctly. So for example, you might have seen that you were withholding pay-as-you-go incorrectly, or you're paying super when you maybe shouldn't have. So it's a really great way to have that peace of mind. Hopefully that has run through how to set up any new pay items and allowances. Was there anything else that you were going to run through, Hannah, in the demo company?
There was one thing, so a client has mentioned this to us previously. So when you go to the Single Touch Payroll portal, the first step is where you update employees. And I know that a lot of clients, they have employees still on file who have not been working for them for a very long time. And in the video, it did describe that if you have inactive employees still in your Xero file, you can leave those and just focus on the ones that are active. But if it bothers you having inactive employees showing up in your employees list, what you can do is you need to terminate their employment. So that will show that they no longer work with you. So you can do that by going to the payroll tab, select employees, and I'll just click on this employee. And employment. So it's asking me to update him, but I believe it's here. And you set the termination date to whenever it was and select the reason for termination. This is sent to the government, I believe. And then once they're terminated, they won't show up in your employees list. And that might also, I know it's an issue for some clients where when they're paying their employees, they have all these old employees still there. They will no longer show up there either.
Perfect. That's a great example. I'm going to ask you, Hannah, unless you've got any other demos to run through, just to hand back over hosting to me. Oh.
I've just handed over to you.
Thank you. And just to tick off any other questions that have come through today's webinar, I have just got rid of my chat box when I did that. There is a question that's come through specifically around leave categories and allocating which one for WorkSafe payments. I might actually just double check that one and get back to you after today's webinar. That's a reminder that if you do have any real niche specific questions, you can always reach out to us after the webinar today. One more question that has come through is, if you don't use allowances at all, do we just click mark as complete, and is it reviewed or NA?
I believe that would be NA if you don't use them, but it is a good idea to set them up just in case you do decide to use them in the future. But if you don't want to set them up now, you can always do that before you start actually paying those allowances to your employees.
And am I right in saying those checklists don't actually get sent to the ATO in any way? It's just more of your own personal checklist, just to make sure that you've looked at those items and changed them if you needed to.
Yes, exactly.
So mark as complete or NA shouldn't really, it should be either. And one more question for you, Hannah. Someone has asked whether or not you can actually bulk update employees.
This would be a great feature, but unfortunately you do have to individually go through all your employees and update them one by one. But if you do give it a go, it's actually pretty quick and it won't take too long, even if you do have a lot of employees.
Perfect. On that note, I think that pretty much wraps up our webinar for today. So a huge thank you for everyone that has joined. Obviously, if you have left a question in there that I haven't answered, I will reach out to you after today's webinar. We hope you really do feel more at ease about updating your own Xero files and becoming STP compliant. Just a reminder that this does have to be done by the 31st of March this year, 2023. This webinar will also be on our website and YouTube channel. So if you're not already aware, we do have a YouTube channel that has a lot of great content out there from businesses, investing, insurances, and all other areas. And of course, like I said, if you do have any specific questions or just want to recap on something, do feel free to reach out to either myself or Hannah. But you do have our firm's details on the screen right there if you do want to reach out to us at all and anyone on the team. Thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.